parts. Now, let me now go back to the I. The I seems to be there solidly. It's all about I. In the end, it comes down to that. So gain, loss, reputation, we can analyze those in the same way. But since it's more on the I here, let's check with regard to our I. We have a strong sense of I, and for instance, success. Okay, it comes along with the feeling of maybe pride or arrogance. Let's look at it. Like maybe a sense of pride or arrogance. It comes along with that. So, actually, if we have a sense of arrogance, sense of I'm important, of arrogance, because of what I can do, etc., not just healthy self-confidence, but an exaggerated version of arrogance, think of all the causes and conditions that give rise to what I can do. Right? We can talk because our parents taught us. We can write because our teachers taught us. Okay? We can do certain things because other people helped us. So lots of causes and conditions that give rise to who we are today. So it's not just all my own. We have a very funny way of looking at it. My problems are my mom's fault. My successes are my own hard work. Sound familiar? Right? Right? Not a very holistic picture here. If I put it in those words, it sounds even funny, but it's true. That's how we think about it. My success was my own hard work. Okay? My failure was my mom, my dad. Okay? Well, in actuality, I am the result of many, many causes and conditions. Many, many causes and conditions. Me now, when I say I, me right now, and this is right now, past is past, future hasn't come yet, so let's look at me right now. Okay. So, my problems, okay, they may come from my mom, but that is very short-sighted, because if I just blame my mom, I should actually blame Safta. Might as well. Why do I stop with... I mean, mom, Ima, is the product of Safta. So I should blame Safta. But Safta is also the product of her Ima. So I should blame Safta's Ima. And Safta's Ima's Ima.
Snake.
What?
Eventually to the snake.
The snake. Yeah, right? Not Eve, actually. No. Snake. Actually, God, because created the snake. But never mind. Okay. No, but, I mean, there's no end to it, first of all, right? Doesn't really make sense. The way we... So if you really think about it, our sense of concretizing things, we make things too concrete. That we do take causes and conditions into consideration, but instead of taking causes and conditions in the most realistic way, we focus on one. We stop with our mother, right? Our mother and father. That's where we stop it. Not the Safta. Oh, I love Safta. She makes the best Trina. No way I'm going to blame Safta. But honestly, that doesn't make sense, right? Actually, I should blame Safta for what Ima did wrong. Why do I blame my mother for my problems, but not blame my grandmother for my mother's problems that are responsible for my problems? Right? That's how it goes. Of course, Safta hasn't harmed me directly. No, she made great Trina, and she didn't have to educate me. When I got too unruly, she passed me back to my mom. Right? I'm exaggerating, of course. Not every Safta does that, but she's not responsible for raising us. That's my mom or my dad, both. So, but what I'm trying to say is, if we really believe that my causes come what my mom has done, we believe I'm just a victim of the causes which are my mom. Well, then my mom is also just the victim of the causes which are her mom. Right? If I cannot be blamed for it, as in I feel like, I couldn't do anything, my mom just basically messed me up, well then my mom was messed up by my grandmother. Right? Or somehow it was everything else. My grandmother was messed up by other people, but in my case it was only my mom. Well, why was I not messed up by other people as well? Right? So I'm just taking the logic a little further. And also to think, my mom, all my problems are my mom's doing, but my success is not my mom. Everything that's good in my life, my mom's got nothing to do with that. That was me. Right? Do we actually also go, okay, I have a problem, my mom did this and this, that was wrong, but she did this right, she did this right. Wow, she taught me how to speak, she taught me how to walk, she taught me how to eat, she taught me the basics that if she had missed the moment of doing it, I wouldn't have learned it. Because like when you have to be really, really little to learn how to talk, and because if you miss that moment, if you start when you're 5, that's too late. Okay? So there are children who are, of course, neglected, unfortunately, and sometimes the parents don't teach them how to speak, etc. They learn it too late, and that's it. Chance missed. They never learn how to talk and speak and think as effectively as other children. So my mother did it in the right moment, and she hung in there until I was able to talk. I was able to go to school. I was able to now learn to read, and we totally forget that. How convenient. So we focus in on just the negative, but because we take in a cause and a condition, yes, we accept some dependence, but just one. How convenient, just my problem, and forget the rest. Okay? And that is not realistic. Simple, good old logic can establish that. And it creates a lot of problems. Our relationship with our parents, possibly with our children, get affected by that. It's not realistic. Okay? So, everything, I am the result of many causes and conditions, not just one, not just my mother. In fact, from a Buddhist point of view, we created the causes and conditions to have this mother. Right? But okay, that may go too far, possibly, for the scale of this course. Forget about what I said. Okay? Or to some degree. Not even getting into this, but of course there's more influences in our lives. And if our mother is responsible for everything, sometimes people say, well, but it was her duty to be like that. I have that response oftentimes. It's her duty. It was her duty. Well, was it? If she had given us up for adoption, she wouldn't have been legally wrong. Okay, throw us away or something. That would be neglect. She would have been punished for that. But she was not obliged to not give us up for adoption. It was not like to keep us and to go through everything she's gone through. Okay? Anyway, so all I'm trying to say is we need to take into consideration we are the result of causes and conditions. But the main causes and conditions come from our own mind. Because we have a mind that can make decisions. And things have happened to us in the past. But there are people who had terrible experiences and they can move on. If we feel trapped in a situation, we cannot let go, then we cannot move on. Okay? So, of course, terrible things have happened to us, but may have happened to us. But what I'm trying to say is we have a mind, we have free will, and we can slowly, okay, through recognizing a problem is called a problem for as long as we believe so. And as children, yes, we can't help it, but we grow older. And through these ideas presented here, we may go back and say, well, okay, now I call it something different. Because every disadvantage, since it's in and of itself not a disadvantage, has an advantage too. Right? If it's just understanding what other people go through because having had that experience. Right? Just from that perspective. So if I undergo certain problems and I feel like I was wronged, I have this problem, it's with me. If I get stuck on my mother, my problem will always be I can't change this. I cannot undo it. And I'm still holding on to it as if it was still there right now. But the only thing that is left with is me constantly thinking about it and still believing it's still solidly, the situation is still right here. The situation is gone. It's done. I'm a different person, my mother is a different person, everything has changed. And I can create the causes and conditions to now move on, learn from her mistakes. Learn from this and make a difference. And people do it all the time. So, to be in touch with the impermanence, the changeability, I'm changing all the time, other people are changing all the time. Only if I hold on to something, in my mind, I'm creating this inherent problem. And what did you put it very nicely? You said something to the effect...
The illusion of the self. Holding on to
the illusion of the self. So you hold on to the illusion of the problem as if it was still the problem, because you're still going on about it. You're going on about it, the problem. You carry it with you. Okay? So let's analyze, just from the point of view, causes and conditions. One moment gives rise to the next, moment gives rise to the next. So we are the result of many causes and conditions, and we are part of those causes and conditions. We can make changes. Yes.
say I murdered someone.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, I'm a victim of my conditions.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it happened last year, so why should I be in prison? Go catch the other guy a year ago, and or maybe just accuse the society as a whole. This emptiness of the self has place that might call us not to be responsible for.
That's another extreme. You're right. That's a good point. She goes right to the point. Very important. Because so far, I've only addressed the emptiness of the self to be able to let go of resentment, to be able to let go of attachment, like resentment towards my whatever someone has done to me and holding on to it. Now, what I was trying to say is that we're not saying there's no I. We're not saying that there are no causes and conditions. Not at all. But what we do is see those causes and conditions and then add more of an existence to them that they actually have, which leads to an exaggerated emotion such as resentment. So, with regard to murder, having murdered someone last year and being punished for that, that still makes perfect sense in that context. To hate that person, to have resentment towards that person, that doesn't make sense. But it's still totally logical to have to stand up, having to stand up for the mistakes you've made in the past. Because our actions do have consequences. Our actions have consequences. And first of all, even without considering karma, things come back to us. So, from a Buddhist point of view, eventually murdering someone will eventually come back to us. So if we are disciplined, then this karma may only come back in the form of punishment in prison, instead of maybe something worse that could slowly, it becomes more of a habit, you don't get caught, you may kill again, etc. So actually being disciplined, society does you a favor. If we have done something, we've killed someone, and we get away with it once, we're more likely to do it again. One part. Society needs to be protected from someone who has done something. We need to set an example to others. You can't kill others. You can't do that. So there are so many reasons for why it is important to punish someone, because actions have consequences. And if it's not through this punishment, it'll be in a different way. Okay? So therefore, that makes sense. It does not require resentment, etc. And the person yesterday, although they're not the same, it's the same continuum. Okay? But that's not how it feels to our mind. Because when we have resentment towards a person, we feel the person I resent now, that is the same as before. That's the one that wronged me. And we're not saying this person is the same person, but it's the continuum of that person. So therefore, it's important to face the consequences. Okay? So in the same way as we drink from a wrong tap, we drink water, a few days later we get sick. I'm not going to hate that person in the past because that's gone now. But I still experience the result of yesterday drinking polluted water and today getting sick. Right? Okay.
I think the very simple way to express it, you take your own responsibility for whatever happening to yourself now.
Yes. Okay, that's a very simple way of expressing it would be you face up, you take personal responsibility for what happens to you now. That works if you believe, of course, that there was something before in a previous existence, but of course we don't need to take that into consideration. That's not part of this course. I don't need to talk about anything more than what just happens in this lifetime, but great if we can think along those lines. But anyway, just within this life, of course, we are the result of maybe many causes and conditions, and it's not just our parents, because that would be simplified. Everything needs many causes and conditions. Even a seed and a sprout, the seed is not the only cause that gives rise to a sprout. There are thousands of causes and conditions that are a part of that. So, to think that we are the result of many causes and conditions, that's one way of looking at ourselves. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was saying that maybe bring compassion to the field of myself and others and learn to dance with the resentment, learn to dance with the ego.
Sure.
Learning to dance moment by moment with each feeling that I'm having in the field of compassion to myself and others.
Yes, I agree with you. That would be definitely to have compassion for everyone involved, but we need to get there first, right? It takes time to get there, and it is through understanding that a non-compassionate state, we come to understand that doesn't make sense. Okay? But going back to the fact we are dependent on causes and conditions, we are dependent on parts. So, what am I as a person? It feels like there's a solid I. Doesn't it feel like there's one I? But actually, and with another person, there's a sense of like just that solid person over there. And their actions seem to be the same as the person themselves. They've done something wrong. Now I'm just looking at that mistake as one with that person. Does that make sense? I'm looking at that mistake and seeing, for me, this is the person who's done such and such. That's all I see. But a person is made up of so much more. Of course, many different body parts, but the body's, of course, minor. That's only what we perceive directly. But there's the mind. There is so much more. There's a different types of mind, and therefore different types of abilities. Okay? So, there are all these parts, and that is true for myself. I'm a very complicated person. You're a very complicated person. The result of many causes and conditions, and made of many different aspects. And then labeled on that, we label I. That's the third type of dependence. We call it I. What is the I?
Merely labeled on the mind.
Merely labeled on the basis of mind and body, we call something an I. Okay? That's the I. Might as well just tell you from the beginning. Okay? So the I is really just that, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like something more solid than just being labeled that. So let's see what the Dalai Lama is saying about this, to go back to this here. He's saying basically when you look at number 3 is understanding the truth. Of course, it's needed to understand how we really exist, how other things exist. It's needed, and I've given all that explanation, so I don't think there's anything more we need to add. And what he says is that we superimpose, of course there's I and there's others, but we believe there's something beyond that. And he gives the example here briefly in chapter, what is it? What chapter is it? What did I just say it was? Chapter 3 of the first part. He mentions it briefly. He gives the example of a rope and a snake. when he says the eye is just called the eye, and then we believe such an eye can be found. Now this is really difficult. This is super difficult. To give you another example, a simpler example. Now don't forget, when we use an example such as a table or a flower, all it is just an example, okay? And then it needs to be taken to the mind. But if I show you this flower, you'll see this flower, right? So would you all agree there were causes and conditions that gave rise to this flower? Yeah, of course, if you're a gardener, you know what I'm talking about, okay? So before this flower came into existence, there were many, causes that gave rise to this. All right, but now we're here right now and you have a flower. Is there a sense that there is a flower that has all these parts?
No.
Is there a sense there's a flower that has petals, a flower that it has the color yellow, a flower that has a stem?
Call
You-
it a flower.
Well, but just the sense, when you look at it, without having the Buddhist intellectual mind there, right, going, I would agree with you, but just look at it. How does it appear to your mind, like in everyday life? It's almost like you take off the Buddhist cap, okay? So like in everyday life, you see this and you go, oh, that's a beautiful flower, right? Okay. So the reason why I'm asking you to take off the Buddhist cap is that we can right now put ourselves into that Buddhist mode and believe that, but it's only effective if we carry it into our daily life. That's the whole purpose. Unless our Buddhist life was our daily life, and then it'll be all right. But our wrong sense of reality is being reinforced every moment. Every moment. If you do a whole retreat, let's say you do a retreat on emptiness for a whole month, you go back to your normal life and it's just, oh, this is really a flower, this is really me, and I'm this, and you keep going back to the old ways, you're just reinforcing it back, and so whatever you've achieved during that retreat will be undone. The slow process will be undone, and you go back to your normal way. So everything we do in the retreat is done. The purpose is to bring it into your daily life. Okay? That's important. Now, that's why I'll ask you, just in everyday life, take off the Buddhist caps. How does it appear? It appears just a good old flower. Big deal, right? A flower. So now we analyze what makes this a flower. Can you get a sense? And I'm saying, when I don't say the Buddhist intellectual idea. No, your own sense does it seem there is a flower that is found among its parts? When we say the flower's petal, the flower's stem, the flower's color, the smell of the flower, right? Oops. I seem to imply, or what it suggests is that there's a flower that has a smell, a flower that has a color, a flower, okay, stay with that. That feeling of a flower and its parts. So, from a Buddhist point of view, we use the label flower, okay? We use the word flower to refer to this object. It's in fact, there are only parts that are not the flower, labeled on which we call it, based on which we call this flower. And then, because otherwise it'd be too difficult to refer to it, if I just say petals, right, then you may not know what I'm talking about, so I say the petals of the flower. What I mean is a flower that is just called that based on the petals. But I use the genitive, okay, to be more specific which petals I'm talking about. That's all. Okay. Now, because I use those words, and the moment we use labels, we add something more to it. To me now, it seems that there is an owner of this flower that holds on to its beauty, that owns the beauty, that owns the color, the shape, and petals, and so forth. Would you agree with me? Would you agree with me? Now, if that's how it existed, we should easily find it. Okay? We should easily find it. So there's two possibilities. Either it's found where the parts are or outside. Okay? Either we say this flower that owns the shape and color is found where the parts are or outside of it. Very simply, we can say, no, it's not like the owner of these petals is outside or separate or is like next to. Like in terms of its location, that's where we have to look. Would you agree? Okay, when we look for the eye, I'm not going to look here or there. I'm going to look where my mind and my body are. Okay. Now, but we stick with the flower because the flower is easier. Not as helpful, but easier. Okay. Now, there's two possibilities. Again, once you decide the flower is to be found where its parts are, either it is one with its parts or it's different from its parts. Would you agree? One or different? Okay. Which one is it? Is it one with its part? Is it identical? Is the flower its parts? No. Otherwise we wouldn't say the parts of the flower. You don't talk of the flower of the flower. If the flower is identical with the flower, it would make sense to use the genitive. So it cannot be the same. So it's different. If it's different, I should be able to remove the parts and have a flower. Right? If I were to remove the parts, would I still have a flower? No. Okay, so it's not one with its parts. It's different from its parts. But when I remove the parts, it's gone. How is that possible?
It's a label of the mind on basing
It's a label. Okay, so she's saying, okay, we just call it a flower labeled on its parts. That's it. That's exactly it. We call it a flower labeled based on the parts of the flower. Okay? But does it seem to be a little bit more than a label? Does it seem to be a little bit more than just calling it that?
It's the smell.
It's not just the parts, the smell is also a part of it, right? The smell, anything like the smell, the color, the shape, the function it performs, the way it is assembled. Yes, I agree, it's much more complicated than that. But based on that, we call it a flower. Does it feel that way? No, it doesn't feel that way. Now, I give you another example. Flowers, in this case, no longer work. We need to take a person. So one of my teachers gives a beautiful example. In the monasteries, in the big monasteries in South India, in exile now, there are many, many monks, thousands of monks. And sometimes they're a little bit naughty, sometimes they're undisciplined, but the new monks in particular, so they need a disciplinarian. The disciplinarian is always a person who has a certain qualification, has taken their Geshe degree, are usually quite calm, compassionate, good with enforcing the discipline, and disciplined themselves. Okay, just a few qualities, and then they're appointed. Does that make sense? They're appointed. Okay, now, being appointed, it's not, you call him now the disciplinarian, he's appointed, so now you can apply the label disciplinarian. Would you agree? Okay. Has the mind of the person changed or the body of the person changed such that you can say, this is the No. You know, it's like now they're called disciplinarian. By independence on certain causes and conditions that I don't have, I couldn't be a disciplinarian because I don't have that basis of labeling. But this person does have, and now you label him disciplinarian. And what happens to the mind of the monks? Right? My teacher being one of them, so he was one of them. He talked about his own experience. When you haven't understood the lack of inherent existence of the object, what happens is, first you need to remind yourself, label, this is the disciplinarian, to such a degree that when you're around this monk, you kind of watch the way you dress, you know, like a little bit like you're not going to be like on your phone playing video games or something. You put away the phone, you're not going to be caught watching movies or whatever.
Military
Study
police.
time. Pardon?
Military police.
Like the military police, okay. Like okay, so anyway, because then you may have to do kitchen service or what have you. So, people have to remind themselves, there's the disciplinarian. Okay. So, then, after some time, you no longer need to remind yourself. What happens is, now there seems to be, still just labeled, it seems to be something coming from the side of this almost like he's got disciplinarian tattooed on his forehead. Okay? Even more than that, you don't need to